Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. The passage is Zechariah 12, verses 2 and 3. It predicts a time when the Jews in Israel, in particular Jerusalem, will be facing a hostile world. That time has arrived. Every nation already opposes Israel's sovereignty in Jerusalem, and thus the vice is closing in on the Jewish people. The peace process begun in secret in Oslo, Norway, was the Jewish response to that increasing pressure from the world, which demands that Israel give up large portions of the Holy Land to Arab enemies, and sovereignty over Jerusalem, all in exchange for a piece of paper promising peace. Why is there opposition? Like many conflicts in world history, religion lies at the root of it. The land of Israel and Jerusalem are occupied by people who now call themselves Palestinians. They are Arabs who almost exclusively practice the religion of Islam. That religion does not allow for Jewish sovereignty over anything where Muslims live, let alone Jerusalem and the Holy Land. And so it is no wonder that the violent confrontation in Israel between the Jews and the Arabs has resulted in more worldwide diplomacy and more worry than perhaps any other political struggle in the world today. And it involves the West, particularly the United States, because they are seen in the Islamic world as the chief sponsors of Israel, and thus enemies of Islam. Just as Bible prophecy predicted, the Holy Land, and in particular Jerusalem, are the focal points of concern. For that reason, the entire world rejoiced at the ceremonial signing of agreements in Washington that were capped with a formerly impossible scene, a handshake between rehabilitated Islamic terrorist Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Rabin later paid for that handshake with his life. But actually, people in America know very little about Islam, the religion synthesized by Muhammad back in the 7th century. There is more misinformation and lack of understanding about the religion of Islam than perhaps any other. But a rude awakening came in 1979 when the Islamic fundamentalist movement, headed by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, swept into power in Iran. American embassy personnel were held hostage for well over a year, and President Jimmy Carter encountered difficulties that no American president had ever faced. In 1981, President Ronald Reagan sent Marines to Beirut, Lebanon, in an attempt to foster disengagement between Israel and the terrorist PLO. Several hundred of those Marines were slaughtered when an Islamic truck bomb exploded just outside their barracks. Then, the 1990 Iraqi invasion of Kuwait resulted in the Gulf War, and again, the tensions between the West and an Islamic Middle East again were brought to the world's attention. Ever since Israel militarily punished several Arab states for their surprise attack in the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Mideast Islamic terrorists, chiefly sponsored by Libya, Syria, and Iran, controlled by Islamic governments, have become worldwide troublemakers, fomenting and sponsoring terrorism against the West, capped by an attempt to topple the gigantic World Trade Center in New York. Midnight Call presents Islam, Fighting Israel and the West. Our guest is perhaps the world's leading Western scholar on Islam, Dr. Robert Morey, author of The Islamic Invasion. Warning, this program is not suitable for younger children. Our guest is Dr. Robert Morey, and he is the author of a number of books. We're going to be focusing on Islam in this time here in our interview. So we won't be able to talk about the other books a whole lot, but Dr. Morey, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, James.
I wanted to begin by quoting a couple of sentences from Chapter 2 of your book, The Islamic Invasion. And you wrote, Western people have a difficult time comprehending Islam because they fail to understand that it's a form of cultural imperialism in which the religion and culture of 7th century Arabia have been raised to the status of divine law. That is really an incredible statement.
Well, yes, it is. And what we must realize is that just like people complain about American imperialism, and they look around and the French are having fits because the young French kids say, in French, they'll say, do you want a Coca-Cola? You know, you want the French fries, you know, the pommes frites. And they're saying, look at all this American imperialism, American movies, American words, American genes. The world is following after America. And there's complaints, and this is imperialism, and this is destroying our culture, and things of this nature. What they must understand is with Islam, such as in the Quran, which is, of course, to this day, the primary source of material would be in Arabic, that Muhammad, as he started the religion of Islam, assumed it was for Arab people, and he never envisioned it would be anything more than an Arabian religion. Never really thought of anybody else could buy into this. It was only after his death and the armies went out, and by the power of the sword, they conquered Egypt, they conquered Turkey, they conquered Persia, things of this nature. But to this day, when you become a Muslim, you are told that it is more important to pray memorizing Arabic prayers even though you do not know what you're saying. It's Arabic language. And then what kind of food should you eat if you're a Muslim? Well, it goes back to whatever Muhammad ate. His diet, the Arab diet of the 7th century. Well, then how should your wife dress? As the women dressed in 7th century Arabia. So even in the movie Not Without My Daughter, starring Sally Fields, it was a story of Betty Mahmoudi. Part of the movie is discussing the fact that after the Shah was kicked out of Iran and the Ayatollah Khomeini took over, and this is in Shiism, and he, of course, as the living prophet, as the successor of Muhammad, whatever he says is infallible. And that's why they must have to follow the Ayatollah Khomeini. And what he did immediately was to announce he was taking the country back to 7th century Arabian standards. And they began to dismantle technology. They didn't want hospital technology. They don't want televisions with satellites and computers. So you always have within Islam the desire to return back to the days of 7th century Arabia, where Islam ruled and the women were veiled and the men were kings and warriors and went out and killed people and had slaves and all the rest. So that's when you really look long and hard at Islam. It's simply taking 7th century Arabian beliefs, superstitions, habits, dress, all of it, and making it into a religion and basically saying, you have to become an Arab, you must speak Arabic, you must dress as an Arab, a 7th century style, in order for you to make it to paradise.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Morey, right now, an event, as we're taping this, an event has just happened in which, at an air base in Saudi Arabia, a large truck bomb exploded, and this has been attributed to Muslim extremists. Now, this is just one in a series of incidents around the world that have been violent incidents that have been attributed to extremists that are following the Islamic Muslim religion. Why does Islam, or looking at the Quran, why do people get inspired to carry out acts that are considered terrorism by the rest of the world, and yet in their eyes are holy, commanded of God? That, for us in the West, that is something that we just can't hardly fathom or understand. Can you help us with that?
Yes, you see, the difference would be this. Jesus told Peter, put up your sword. You see, Jesus was not a bandit chief. This wasn't Ali Baba. This wasn't Jesus Christ and 40 Thieves. He didn't arrange a band of cutthroats and then he tell them, hey, look, I want you to go out and attack Jewish caravans kill the men, kidnap the women and the kids, sell the kids off as slaves, keep the women, rape them, whatever you want to do, trade them around. Instead, he said, my kingdom will be advanced not by physical violence, but through the preaching of the good news of the gospel. So Christianity has always been spread. Biblical Christianity has always spread by means of the preaching of the gospel and moral persuasion. But you see, but when you come to Islam, Muhammad did the opposite. He was a bandit leader, just like Ali Baba, you have Muhammad, and he had his thieves, and his first act was to send them out to attack a caravan, kill the men, rape the women, sell off the kids, and grab the money. And his followers have always been told to use violence to spread Islam and to take care of the enemies of Allah. Now, the Muslims at this point become very defensive. They say, oh, but it says in the Quran, in Surah 2, it says there is no compulsion in Islam. Well, what they fail to tell you is that the Quran is divided into two historical contexts. There are those revelations which were given in Mecca at the beginning when he was a weak and feeble leader, had just a few disciples, and at that point he was conciliatory, and he says, oh, the Jews, we love the Jews, we love the Christians, we love the pagans, and it was like a Coca-Cola commercial, we are the world. It was just marvelous. And he said, oh, there's no compulsion, nothing to fear, folks, we're just over here doing our thing. Then he fled to Medina. In Medina, the people flocked to him. He had enough in terms of power to finally get an army. And the next time he came to Mecca, he came with the sword and he killed people. Then you have all the verses that says, wherever you find the infidels, kill them, slay them, lie in wait for them. If they oppose Islam, crucify them, which they're doing in Sudan right now. Cut off their heads, chopping this, killing this. So that as you look, the Medinan surahs all are saying, go out and fight and conquer in the name of Allah. The Muslim, figuring you don't know that, will quote the Meccan surahs, where he was conciliatory and talked about the people of the book. So the bottom line is this: Islam was given its great commission. See, Jesus told his disciples, go into all the world and preach the gospel. Well, Muhammad said to go into all the world and conquer them with the sword and force them. Now, the way the force has done this, and I have the book they have written against me, simply says this: accept Islam or die. Now, I will not force you to make the choice. If you wish to die, James, that is your choice. Mm-hmm. It is of your own free will you choose to die. That I put the gun and I say, accept Islam or die. And they said, that's not compulsion. Well, would you consider that compulsion? Would you?
Well, I personally, I think that would be a form of compulsion.
I think
most certainly.
I think by any stretch, they call it mugging. Now, you don't have to give me your money. Give me your money or die. But hey, tell the cops I didn't force anything. You gave your money willingly.
Mm. Let me just move on in this vein a little bit. In Israel, with the advent of peace talks between the PLO and all of the agreements that are going on, Muslim extremists have pledged to stop this process. They do not want peace.
And they're not really extremists.
Yes, and I'm going to let you enlarge upon that. However, there are young men that are being convinced by holy men, Islamic holy men, to strap bombs to themselves to get into as crowded a place as possible and then detonate that bomb in hopes of killing as many Jews as possible. Now, when we look at this, we think this person has a whole life ahead of them. What has motivated them to do that?
Well,
are they given a promise of paradise? What could possibly lead someone to do that?
Well, the first thing you must understand with Islam is that you have the Quran, which would be the record of 114 revelations that Muhammad received from Gabriel or Jibril. Then you have the Hadith. Now the Hadith, the greatest is Sahih al-Bukhari's Hadith, 9 volumes, 6,000 pages. So in the Hadith, you are told many things that are not in the Quran that Muhammad taught, Muhammad did. And this is called the second inspiration, the Hadith. And Muslims are to follow this. Well, in the Hadith, we are told that Muhammad said that Allah had commanded him and all Muslims to fight the Jews and the Christians till either they convert or they have to pay a tax and be subdued. For example, no Muslim should ever be in a situation where his boss is a Christian or a Jew or a pagan. He must always be the boss. He can never be the employee. And as part of the Hadith, what is called jihad, part of the jihad says, if you die while seeking to kill Jews and Christians or to subdue them and to make Islam dominant, you will be guaranteed to go to paradise. Now don't think of the Christian view of heaven. You know, it's a very sanitary heaven. When you go to heaven, you expect to see the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. You have the Holy Trinity, and you'll see Jesus seated upon the throne, will you not? Mm-hmm. And will there be angelic choirs? And what will they be singing? Holy, holy, holy. Is holiness something that's just, it's written all over heaven? And the people who are there, will they be joined in worship?
Yes.
Yes.
Certainly.
Now, is there little cubicles where you can go and get it on and have sex for eternity? Is sex in heaven?
Not in the Christian heaven.
Not in the Christian heaven. Is there homosexuality in the Christian heaven? That if you don't like women and you like boys or something, you can get yourself in?
No.
No, no. Now, in the Muslim paradise, you must understand, having told the Muslims on earth, for example, you cannot drink wine. No alcoholic beverages. And if you are faithful to Allah, wait for paradise, because there will be rivers and fountains of wine and you can drink all you want. On earth, don't get involved in sodomy, in homosexuality, but wait until paradise, for there will be young men with earrings and necklaces. You can have all the sex you want with them. And if you don't want them, there will be women who are chained, who are kept stark naked. They have chains and collars, and they have couches. And as Muslim man, you have the right to go and have sex with all of these women. And the women are called the houris, from which we get our word whore. It's the Arabic whores, meaning these women who's got to service everybody. So what you have in the Muslim heaven is that you get to drink all you want and get drunk, and you get all the women you want or all the men you want. That's the Muslim view of heaven. And some people are so excited about getting there, they're willing to strap a bomb on themselves and blow themselves up.
Now, we're not making this up.
No,
you're quoting this from Islamic,
from the Quran and the Hadith. The Quran says there will be the women, the houris will be waiting for you, and the young men will be there.
All right, let's shift for a moment out of the Middle East, where that bombing is taking place. In America, there's a transformation taking place, and this is part of one of the projects that you're involved in, and that is working with black prisoners in the jails in America, where they're converting to Islam at an unprecedented rate. And that this is really having a very strong impact, not only in the prison, but when these men get out, you're saying that they go and convert their families, and this is resulting in mosques being built, the rise of Islam right in the middle of America.
Yes.
Can you tell us about this project and what you're intending to do, what's taking place in the prisons with the black men?
Well, one of the surprises in my book, Islamic Invasion, that the people are quite shocked at, is when I give them the statistics. And what you must understand is that out of the 4 to 6 million Muslims we have in this country, 48% are black Americans who used to be Christians who are now Muslims. Now, what has been the catalyst? Where has been the birthing ground? What has been the context of such a massive movement out of the Christian church into the mosque? It's been the prison system. Mm-hmm. So where did Malcolm Little become Malcolm X? In prison. Where did Cassius Clay become Muhammad Ali? Prison. Where did Mike Tyson become a Muslim?
Prison.
Prison. Mm-hmm. Where do they gain the majority of their men? Prison. Now you'd say, do you mean that the Muslims have specifically targeted the black men in the prison system in order to convert them to Islam? The answer is yes. You say, why? Islam is not only a religion, it's also a military strategy to conquer a country, destroy its constitution, Bill of Rights. If Islam ever took over the United States, there would be no freedom of religion, no freedom of speech. That's why there is no such thing as an Islamic democracy. Can you name me one Muslim country that's a democracy? There never will be. It's impossible, you say. Because, just take for example, the Quran and the Hadith say if a Muslim renounces Islam and becomes a Christian or something else, the death penalty by law. Well, how can you have freedom of religion if you're killed if you leave? It's like the mafia. When you join, they give you a silver bullet. Mm-hmm. Now, why do they give you the silver bullet? Because that's the only way you'll ever leave, is the bullet through the head. So you're told, once you join the Purple Hand, you don't leave. Islam is the same way. Once you join us, we'll kill you if you leave. So, in order to have this military strategy to overcome a nation, you either have an army attacking. Now, the Muslims cannot march on us as an army because thankfully we have an ocean. Or you launch missiles, and we are getting concerned about that because you see Syria and Saddam and other. Don't you know that Saddam would have hit us with missiles if he would have had that capability? Yeah, he rained missiles down on Israel. He would have rained it on New York City if he would have had a chance. So if you can't do that, then what you do is you do acts of terrorism to wreak havoc in the country. And how are you going to do that unless you have an army of terrorists? So these Muslims are very smart, and they says, where in America can we find a disfranchised, bitter group of men who are sociopaths, or serial killers, murderers, rapists, men who can blow up a school bus full of children and bother them, blow up buildings and whatnot? They said, all of these black guys in prison who were murderers and rapists, they would make wonderful Muslims. Okay? So they go and convert them and then train them to be terrorists. So when the World Trade Building was blown up, 2 of the people involved were American blacks converted to Islam, trained to see. And see, so Islam is perfecting the art of killing people and blowing up things. And in order to get this done, they have targeted black men in prison and are telling them that in the name of God, you can rape, you can kill. In other words, the very things that you did that landed you in jail, you can now do with Allah's blessing. Mm-hmm. You just say, so this is a good deal, man. Meaning Islam, I can have as many women as I want? Yeah. Well, in Christianity, they say I could only be married to one woman. But in Islam, I can have 4 wives, 12 wives. And in Islam, I can rape, kill, yeah, all in the name of Allah. Amen. This is a good deal. So they are having an entire army of sociopaths in this country who will be triggered into killing people and blowing up things. So this is a very dangerous situation. You think I'm making it up? I'm not. The FBI is quite aware of this, let me tell you.
So we have a question now before us, and this is part of your project. I want you to explain briefly. What is the plan to try to counter that effort in America's prisons? You're starting in South Carolina. Is that correct?
Yes. I believe the Lord has chosen this state because the forces of darkness are gathering here. Farrakhan has announced that he intends to make Columbia, South Carolina, his southern headquarters. The Hindus have chosen Columbia, South Carolina as the headquarters for American Hinduism, where they're going to produce their encyclopedia and things of that nature. Many of the cults in the occult are now focused on Columbia, South Carolina. You say, well, why are the forces of darkness gathering here? Because this is where modern missions began. This is where God has done great revivals. This is the buckle on the Bible belt. And if you're going to undo the Bible belt, get rid of the buckle. And can you wear a belt without a buckle? You can't.
Good point.
So they're gathering here, and the prisons are of special interest to the Muslims, and they are working day and night to convert primarily the black men to Islam, to make them soldiers either in Farrakhan's Fruit of Islam army or in the Orthodox Muslim, the Sunnis, etc., to make them terrorists, rapists and muggers and thuggers in the name of Allah. And what we need to do is, number one, we have to understand this is going on, and it is, as I've talked with people involved in the prison system. Number two, that the way to fight this is with truth. The moment you give the light on Islam, they scatter. For example, the main bait on the hook of Islam that they're using to reel in these young black men, they say Muhammad was a black man. Islam is the black man's religion. Christianity is the white man's religion. Jesus is a white man. The Bible's a white man's book. You're a black man. Why don't you be a black man's religion? You're African religion. And they give all this flim-flam, and they say, well, the name Tom and Fred, that's slave names. You need a good African name like Muhammad, Kareem Abdul, Jazim, Khadija, and all this other stuff. And what we have done is we have the documentation from the Quran and the Hadith that shows that Muhammad was a white man. He is said to be a white man. I mean, a guy gets off his camel and he says, where's the Prophet Muhammad? And they said, this white man over here.
This is written in their book.
Their books. We are told over and over again, he was a white man. Matter of fact, Muslims, Arab Muslims, are very insulted if you would even say to them that Muhammad was a Negro. The Arabs do not consider themselves African. They are not part of the African continent. They consider themselves Middle Eastern. Now, Muhammad not only was a white man, he was a racist. He referred to black people as raisin heads. Now that's unkind. He told black people, he did dream interpretation. Muhammad was an occultist. He was a shaman. And one came to him and said, I have a dream. Could you interpret it? He says, I had a dream of a black woman. And Muhammad said, oh, if you dream of a black woman, that is the omen of pestilence and disease and catastrophe. You know how many black men dream of black women? That's going to control. It's a curse, you see. And then he was a slave owner of black slaves. We even have the names of his black slaves. And how he abused them. One was Mahran. Now Mahran was a black slave of Muhammad. And Muhammad changed his name to Safina, which means a ship to carry goods. I want you to listen. Now this is, when I quote, I'm quoting Muslim historians, Muslim theologians, the Hadith. I'm quoting their books where they write about themselves. I want you to listen to the testimony of Mahran. And Mahran said, quote, the apostle of God and his companions went on a trip. When their belongings became too heavy for them to carry, Muhammad told me, spread your garment. They filled it with their belongings, and they put it on me. The apostle of God told me, carry it, for you are a ship. Even if I was carrying a load of 6 or 7 donkeys while we were on the journey, everyone who felt weak would throw his clothes or his shield or his sword on me, so I would carry that a heavy load. And the prophet told me, you are a ship of burden.